What kind of events did they hold in the ancient Greek Olympics?
So, according to Hippias, the earliest event, and certainly this was the event that remains the most prestigious event, was a foot race. It's called the Stadion, from which we get the word stadium, and it was of about 200 meters. And then other events were added in subsequent years, such as the 400 meters, the long distance foot race, wrestling, pentathlon, boxing, the four horse chariot race, and perhaps the most famous, the Pancration, which was an extreme combat sport in which the only prohibitions were against biting and gouging out your opponent's eyes.
Okay, wow. We should bring that one back. So, in the modern Olympics, part of the role of the Games is to promote peace and fellow feeling among rival nations. Was there any equivalent to that amongst the ancient Greeks?
Well, actually, the architects of the modern Olympics did appeal to what they consider to be an ancient precedent for this, and that is what is called the Ekekeria, or we could call it the Olympic truce. War and hostility between ancient Greek city states, and there were hundreds of them, was pretty much endemic. Some people think it was actually the default option. But the Olympic truce established the conditions of peace for a period of around 3 months over the summer so as to guarantee safe passage to competitors, spectators, and pilgrims who wished to travel to and also from Olympia.
Okay, excellent. And before we go any further, can you explain one vocabulary term? What do we mean when we say city states?
So, Greece was not politically unified. In fact, it wasn't politically unified until 1830. In antiquity, it was a series of small city states, which city is perhaps something of an exaggeration in some cases, but we're talking about conurbations that controlled a fairly small area of agricultural land. And most of them, at least in the period we've been discussing thus far, most of them were independent. But they were of varying sizes and they were also differently powerful. So you had powerful city states like Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Argos, and so on. Actually, the closest settlements to Olympia were quite insignificant places. Tradition says that the earliest was Pisa, and that the residents of Pisa sort of administered the day to day running of Olympia. And then a little later, a place called Elis that I mentioned earlier, although until the 5th century, that was a very dispersed settlement pattern. Now, I think this is relevant to the Olympic Games and why this particular locality became so important, because the weakness of these local communities meant that, in effect, the area around Olympia was a neutral meeting ground for elites, initially from the Peloponnese and then from further afield. And it's quite interesting that already towards the end of the 8th century, we start seeing dedications of votive objects, so objects that are dedicated to Zeus, that have clearly been manufactured in Italy and indicate the presence of visitors from South Italy and Sicily, which were both areas of Greek settlement from the 8th century. Now, Olympia is in the western Peloponnese. It's not on the coast, but it's not far from the coast. So it's easily accessible to Greek elites from the Italian sphere.
Thank you.